Now, especially in the past few months, there's been so much change, so much ambiguity. Our healthcare system is going through a reform right now. So how do leaders lead during these times?
I always find in a crisis situation, and I think this has come out very strong, is that leaders have to look to those who know the business the best. And we have to depend on our scientists and our medical leaders that really understand infection control and understand this pandemic, for example. And many leaders have stepped back and listened to their scientists, or they've listened to the science and they followed those individuals. I went through the SARS experience. I was front and center. St. Mike's Hospital was a SARS hospital. We received SARS patients from the other hospitals. And I remember at that time, our infection control person became the number one spokesperson at our management meetings. And we all listened to them. And they were the ones who were making the decisions. And for a president and an executive vice president to step back and say, this head of microbiology is making all the decisions for us, that was a big deal. But at certain times, you have to let other people lead and you have to follow because they know the direction that we have to go at that time. So a leader being able to step back and not say, oh, I have to take the lead all the time. And I think we've seen this with our politicians. Some have handled it very well and some have handled it terribly because they feel they have to be the lead and they have to make the decisions rather than listen to the scientists. So it's a very good lesson for people to watch that dynamic because the good leaders are the ones that let the people who know what they're doing take charge. Those are the good leaders. I'm not going to mention any names.
And it also shows your vulnerability as a leader. As a great leader, it doesn't mean you need to have all the answers. You don't need to know
Absolutely.
everything.
That's why you have a team. And that's why we all bring our own skill set. And that's why, as you mentioned, the lessons learned are you have to let people give you creativity, give you the ideas, and then you make your decision.
And what do you enjoy most now as your role as a consultant?
The best thing that's happened is I can pick and choose who I work with. I sit on a number of advisory boards with various companies. I'm doing some executive search right now. The organization I work with, those organizations are people that we both agreed that we want to do something together, but in the end, I've decided that I'm going to do that with them. And if I didn't want to do it, I wouldn't be with them right now.
Right.
So you have a little more flexibility than in a full-time job.
And the work that you're doing, what's the impact you're hoping it's going to have on the world?
Well, again, in many cases, I'm mentoring people because it's working with organizations that really don't understand the health system totally, and they want to get to know the system better or get to know leaders better. And I always encourage them to work with the Canadian College of Health Leaders, which has been an organization dear to my heart. I mean, I've grown up with the college, still do volunteer work for the college because it's very important to me, my professional association. And many of these organizations, I'm introducing them to the college and I'm introducing them to health leaders. But mostly what I'm doing is I'm sharing my lifelong experience. And that's really my role as an executive advisor to these companies is here's my experience, here's what I would do, but you have to make the decision. I'm just your advisor. And that's the most difficult part because before I could say this is the way we're going to do it. And now it's this is my advice to you. And they don't always accept my advice. So you have to live with those punches, right?
Right. And how do you feel when that...
Oh, it's okay. You know what? I always say to them, you hired me for my opinion. And that's all I'm going to give you. You're the one who has to make the decision. So For the most part, they listen to me. But
And
there are times they don't. I don't have that same rejection factor anymore, though.
and when leaders make decisions or aspiring leaders make decisions, decision making is such a key skill in leadership. And we go to seek advice, or we go and ask people who've been there before, who've done those kinds of things before. But at the end of the day, it's still the leader who should take ownership of the decision.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As a good leader, you're getting input and you're getting others' opinions.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, you are the one that has to make the decision.
Right.
And you're the one who has to live with it.
Mm-hmm.
And you say to your team, I might not have gone with what you suggested, but this is the way we all have to move forward because this is the decision that I've made.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why team members are very important. Even though you might not have accepted or that wasn't the way you wanted to go, being a good member of a team is that you live with the decision.
Mm-hmm. In many organizations, we get decisions that come from the higher ups, from the CEO down to the middle management. And sometimes the middle management has not completely bought the idea to sell it to their team or to convey that message.
Yeah. It's a really important point that you're making. Organizations that do not spend a lot of time on getting the message out and the clear message and making sure it's understood and people support it, they're the organizations that are having trouble. And that's why when I talked about earlier about rounding, going out and making sure people are understanding, doing town halls, having management meetings every 90 days at least with your full management team, or doing monthly meetings with your management team. So they are hearing from the executive exactly what the message is. Those, if I could do that every day, I would do it. It's not possible. But the most important thing in my view is getting that message out and making sure that those managers at the front line understand the message, because they are the ones that convey it to the staff and to the patients. So it's a really important point you raise. You probably could talk to anyone about John King in his career. My philosophy was management by wandering around. I was all over the organization. I made sure that I knew what was happening. I would stop any staff member and ask them, how are things going? Are you happy in your job? Are there things we can do better? And that was just my style. So a lot of people said, how did you have time to go walk around all the time? And it's a good question, because I used to work and do my office stuff late into the night, but it was so important for me to get out, to know the staff, to know the people's names. That made them feel so good when I could call them by name. And they felt I knew what they were going through, knew the challenges, and I think I was respected for that. I always felt that if you had a happy, engaged staff, you would have happy, engaged patients. If your staff are unhappy, automatically bounces off onto your patients. So my philosophy was always that, and I believe very strongly in getting out in the organization. I encourage everyone to do that.